So what I have here is 2 yards of a 4-way stretch. This one happens to be a cotton jersey. I had my stash. And all I'm going to do, I'm going to fold it in half. Let's see here. Make sure I do this right. Otherwise, it won't be long enough. Yes, that's my 2-yard measurement there. So you want to match, and this is take your time with this step. You want to fold it in half along the selvages. And then you want to lay it out on your area. And when we cut out the main piece, we're going to still use some of the scraps for our ankle cuffs, because what I don't put in a tube around the waist anymore. When I first started, I did that. And now I actually just serge the waistband directly without a casing and then flip it down, and it makes a self casing. It makes such a much better finish on it than the other way I was doing it. You can do it either way that you want, and I will tell you how to do it both ways. But it says it's a more professional finish, my new method. And all I'm doing here, I'm making sure I get all the wrinkles out of it as much as possible, just so there's not no huge wrinkles in it to throw the cuts off. So here's the fold line right here, the fold line on the pattern will go, and this is where it's folded over in half, the yardage. Coming from a quilting background, when you first start working with stretch fabrics, and I don't know where your backgrounds are, but I can tell you it takes a little bit of time to get everything laid out nice and smooth with knit fabric. Okay. So we're going to cut the entire pants in one swipe. If you're not comfortable with that, you can do it. You can make 2 cuts, but that fold line for the front and the back of the pants are just 2 pieces. So for instance, on this one, right here is my fold line. Fold line on the pattern, fold line on the 4 layers of fabric right here. And what I like to do, so I'm lining all this up, get those edges nice and neat. And here's why I like flannel to make patterns with. Once you lay it out, it kind of adheres to it, the fabric that it's laying on. I'm just going to smooth it out nice. Right there like that. Felt the wrinkle right there. There we go. Okay. And what I'll do, I'll put me 2 little if you have wonder clips, you can do this. If not, I mean, this isn't really necessary, but just for security and to keep those evenly spaced on that fold line, it wouldn't hurt to put a couple of wonder clips there just to hold everything in place. There we go. And one right here. Another reason to do this, because you're going to have to move it a little bit if you're using a rotary cutter and a ruler. So if you're going to use a rotary cutter, it's ready to cut now. So I will not be cutting along this fold line. So all we would do now is just line this up right along the edge of that fabric, and we can cut it with the rotary cutter and a ruler. One thing I do like to do, I like to put, I have several rulers, so I will put one along this line up here without cutting it, just to hold everything in place. Then I can actually move it around on my cutting mat to where I need it. So this would be my first cut right here. And I'm just going to cut it all the way down. And then I'm going to hold on to this fabric because I can probably reuse it. Then I'm going to cut this big long seam up here. Just going to pull it down. Now I'm not cutting the pattern, I'm going a hair past it. Because when we sew this with the serger is going to do some trimming on this anyway. There we go. Now down here. Okay. Now I have one more line to cut. Let's see here. Bring it right here. Partially cut this run because it's a long one, longer one. And then I'm going to move it up. And there we go. Now that is entirely cut out. And I know I had a little wrinkle down here, but you know what? This is a time you can go straighten that out. And I'm not really that concerned when that happens, because when we actually start sewing, all these cut lines are actually seam lines. So once we start cutting and serging, those will be trimmed off by the serger anyway. So I don't get too crazy about that. Okay. So the next thing we're going to cut out, the cuffing for the two legs on our pants. So what we're going to do, we're going to take one of these pieces we have left over. Now, I will just, before we cut up any of this, I want to describe something else. So let me see, do I have another pair of these pants down here? So this will be our waistband right here that we cut, right? I mean, this is where our waist is. So there's two ways to attach the elastic up here. I'm going to talk about that before we say anything else. So the way I personally like to do it, because it gives such a beautiful finish, is to actually sew the elastic right onto this waistband when we get to that step. Another method is to cut a 4-inch strip of fabric the same distance, the same size as what this measurement here is, the same size as your waist. In other words, the same size as this distance that we have here. So if this is, say, with the +3, 12 inches, you would cut one 12 times 4. So you cut 4 inches times 48 is the total length you would need. That could be pieced together, but that's what these pieces of fabric like this is for. Okay, I don't do that anymore. When you do it that way, it makes a tube, and then you have to fish your elastic through that tube and then finish sewing it to your waistband. It's a pain to do it that way. What I have found, though, is this other method that I'll demo. And I'm going to demo the method before you try it, so then you can make the decision which way you want to go. But back to the leg cuffs. We need 2 pieces of fabric, 12 inches by 6 inches. So for instance, this is 4 layers right here, okay? So there's plenty of fabric. And where's that? And here's a fold line. So I'm just going to move this to the side because that's done. So I could actually use this. I could unfold it, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to layer it, the second piece on top of it. I'm going to cut me a 6 by 12 inch rectangle through these 2 layers. And that will be for the cuffs around my ankle openings. Let me cut these and I'll show, you'll understand what I'm doing once I cut them and show you what I'm going to do with them. Okay. So this ruler happens to be 6 inches this way. So I'm just going to move it down here. And my rotary cutter, I'm just going to cut this off at this end. Okay. Now I'm going to come down here and put the 12-inch mark right where I cut it. And now if I cut here, I have my 12 inches. Now I'm going to trim right up the sides. And now both of my cuffs are cut. So when I go over to the serger, what I'm going to do with these after we get the main body of the pants sewn together, these will fold in half lengthwise. And this will be the cuff for around the bottom, around the ankle. If you want those cuffs larger, you can make them any size you want, but they need to be 12 inches in length, because that way they will match the ankle openings for our ankles. Because just remember what those will do, once you make those into it, they'll be, after we sew the legs, the 3 seams, and there's only 3 seams in the major seams in the body of the pants. So those are going to go around each leg opening is where those will go. And trust me, I put those on all of mine and they're not super tight, but they're not super loose. So they're really beneficial. If you get them attached and they're too loose for what you want, you can always take them up in the seams. So the next thing we get to do, if we have our 2 pieces cut for our leg openings. Next, we're going to cut our elastic. So what you want to do is take your original waist measurement and subtract 6 from it. Now, I don't mean the waist measurement plus 3, your original number, whether it's when you took a measurement of your waist, if it was 32, you'd want to cut 26 inches. Take 6 inches away from that number, and that's what you need to cut your elastic. Or you can just fit it around your waist. And when you make sure, then when you stretch it, make sure it feels comfortable. And you can cut it there without measuring it as well. Either way works, but I find that 6-inch rule really works well. Yes, when the pandemic started, I found some really great suppliers for elastic. So this is a 50-yard spool of non-roll waist elastic that I actually have two of those. Okay, so. And then what you will need to do on a sewing machine is overlap. Let's see here. Overlap those two ends about an inch and just sew some straight stitches back and forth on that elastic to secure those two together so they're nice and flat. Cut one piece of elastic for your waist, and then you're going to overlap those two ends about an inch. Now, if you're doing the casing method and not my direct sew method, you don't want to sew those together. I highly recommend, though, that you do the method I'm going to show you. It saves a lot of frustration and you get a much more professional finish that way. You can use a straight stitch or a multi-step zigzag stitch to bring the two edges of elastic together.